Run It Studios is the home of the Run Radio podcast and runradio.net, a podcast and station about the relentless, resilient, and innovative types, inspiring strides in life, business, and beyond. Welcome back to the Run Radio podcast for Run It Studios. My name's Trina Wilcox, and my guest today is really what Run Radio is all about. Run It Studios, we talk about running things, literally and metaphorically. And so you are running a business, you're running your career the way you want to, and I'm excited to learn all about that. Welcome, Keisha McMillen with Liberated Creatives.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I'm glad that you're here because you're doing something that a lot of us only dream of and a lot of us are scared to do. And that is, letting go of something that we're doing or just putting the 9 to 5 on the back burner, or I guess not at the forefront, while we start living out something that we're really passionate about. So tell me how that was for you.
Yeah, so kind of just to give you an idea of my background, I got my bachelor's degree from Drury University in 2018 with theater and arts administration. So growing up, I was always that performer, that entertainer. We would have, part like family gatherings, and I would always have like a performance scheduled for the event, and I wrote my younger sisters in as my backup dancers and kind of all those things. So I always grew up as a creative performing artist. When I graduated with my theater degree, I found myself really burnt out on theater. So I started to focus on arts administration, which, for people who don't know, it's kind of a fancy term of business management specifically for the arts. So I always knew I wanted to work in the arts, but following my arts admin degree, I found myself working in nonprofits and really finding a way to use my skills and give back to my community. So for many years, my goal was to find ways to help elevate other artists and help them level up in their careers with just the skills and experiences I was gaining. But it got to a point where I was spending so much time helping other artists, and that truly is something I'm very passionate about. But I started to lose my own way as an artist. I was so focused on the business aspect that I forgot all about the creative things I used to love to do. So eventually, it got to a point where I received what I thought was going to be my dream job working for other nonprofits and organizations as an administrator. But I lost that like work life balance.
Mm.
And so I would try to go back to theater or try different hobbies like in my spare time. But then I realized that's where my true passion lied.
Mhm.
Um, and I found myself trying to balance the two and realized, oh, like it was getting to a point where, hey, if you want to direct this play, we can pay you for that. Or if you want to model for the shoot, we can pay you for that. So the more I started to follow my passions, I started to realize, hey, I'm pretty good at these things. And now that I have this business mindset over the past 5 years, I can merge the two and I can find a way to have my passions become my paychecks.
Yeah.
And so now with Liberated Creatives, that's exactly what I'm trying to do with other artists is kind of use my life and experiences as a blueprint on how to turn your passions into paycheck and teach other artists that they don't have to use that starving artist model that we are
Yes.
all aware
Yes.
of. And there's actually a strategic way to start making a living with your art. So that's exactly what I'm trying to help other artists do and other individuals or groups who are just looking for a creative outlet or a creative flair or process with their other project or other endeavors and just moving forward with a holistic and artistic expression.
Oh, I'm so glad that you are able to listen to your gut, but it is hard, especially when so many of us, we've got bills to pay. We've got to make sure X, Y, and Z is covered. There's medical, everything that it takes to exist in this world. And like you're saying, it can often pull from what our passions are and what makes us creative beings. How were you able to finally recognize and start to pull away from that without going too far away from that thing that made you feel alive and good about being you?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's definitely a balance,
Yeah.
especially if you're a multi-passionate like me. Like I wear many different hats. I have many different passions. And something I like to tell some of the people I'm working with is to put your different passions into seasons. For example, if I'm going to direct a play, I know that's going to take, 2+ months of my time for preparation. Also, if I'm going to curate an exhibition, that's also going to take the same amount of time. So you kind of have to ask yourself, okay, which one do I want to focus on at this time? Which one do I want to prioritize? And then, put that into a season. Like
Mhm.
for this amount of time, I'm doing curation and maybe I'll do theater,
Mhm.
down the road. And also, it's a really great way because, like you were saying, how can you follow your passions as an artist while you still have bills to pay and other things like that? And it is a process. It is a process to figure out what your value is.
Mhm.
And then, in order to allow yourself to actually follow through with that value as well. And because I think a lot of artists specifically, we tend to undervalue our worth, or we're kind of afraid to sell our art for what we know it's
Mhm.
worth, but like what is the audience, what are our clients going to be able to afford, and kind of just being able to say, like, trying to find a middle ground, but
Yeah.
also not sabotaging yourself for what your
Yeah.
worth is.
Yeah.
And so it's a steady process of trying to figure out the tools and trying to create a matrix for what's going to work for you and also going to work for your clients. And then you also have to tell yourself, if your audience or your client doesn't follow with you, then maybe they're not your right audience or client. So it's a lot of,
Yeah.
you know, um, kind of a trial and error process until you find what the right um, like notion is for you, trying to figure out like what best fits. So it is a process, but collaborating with other artists or working with other mentors and advisors is a really great way to kind of get you where you need to go. Something my advisor has told me, Justin, is not a lot of people want to help you build your foundation, but they do want to help you keep the lights on.
Mm.
And I thought that was a really interesting take.
That is. And let's talk about that for a second. You did something very wise, and that is to get a mentor. Because when you're entering into entrepreneurship, it's a different animal altogether because you're used to doing things so differently in the business setting, the office setting, whatever it is that anyone that comes from working from someone else does, than working
Mhm.
for yourself. You have all of these new things pop up and you need somebody to talk to. So you got a mentor through SCORE. Can you talk really briefly about that?
Yeah, so Justin, back when I was an undergrad getting my degree, I went to school at Drury University in Springfield, Missouri, and I had classes on Commercial Street, or C Street as
Mm-hmm.
locals call it.
Yes.
And I used to go to Big Mama's during my breaks, and Justin Pippins, he was there all the time. And he just always was someone who was really interested in what I was doing, or he'd always have a word of advice, or he just really turned into someone who cared about what I was doing and what my endeavors were and what my dreams were. So when it got to a point where I was ready for Liberated to launch, right? Because as an artist and as an upcoming entrepreneur, Liberated Creatives is an idea I've been sitting on for years. Right? It's always
Yeah.
that big dream that you're like, oh, I'm not quite ready, this doesn't fit, I don't know how this is going to work. So it took time for me to be like, okay, it's either now or never. And I reached out to Justin knowing his association with SCORE and Minorities in Business and other organizations like that. So when I reached out to him saying, hey, I have all these things figured out, but I can't move forward or I'm stuck here, like, can we get coffee?
Yeah.
And he's been great in regards to just looking at my business plan, knowing who I am as a person and what I've done in the past, and being able to help me fill those holes that I had, especially in regards to, hey, if you're afraid of this or you're not so sure about this, then that's where your focus needs to be.
Oh, good,
You need
good.
to learn how to jump that hurdle. And so he's been a really good advisor in regards of making sure that I have connections with people who are going to help me move forward to that next step, even if it's just, going to this networking event where I know I don't know anyone,
Yeah.
or it's
Right.
just like, hey, like, here's this contact, someone who's very similar to what you do, give them a call, just cold call.
Yeah. Yeah.
Certain things like that, especially for anyone who might be a little more introverted like me, like knowing the things that scare you or might be difficult for you and just doing them head on has
Mhm.
actually built my confidence surprisingly, where I'm just like, okay, like I can actually do this and it's not that scary.
Yeah.
So, getting an advisor or mentor who can help you fill those holes or overcome those obstacles is extremely important in starting a new business. So,
So let's get back to that advice he gave you that people will want to help you keep the lights on.
yes, yes.
Okay, and so
Yeah,
what have you done with that?
yeah. So it's been really interesting because you have to start from the idea
Mhm.
and then go into the planning process. So a lot of people um, tend to go ahead and do all the other things in regards to starting a business, but then they start, getting work done. They're like, oh, I don't actually have a business plan.
Mm. Yeah.
So certain things like that of there are steps to this, like you have to know more than just what the idea is or what you want to get across. Like,
Mhm.
who's going to be your audience? How are you going to market this? How are the logistics of the business going to work out? And so I thought it was really interesting in a sense to and I think it's okay to find an advisor and be like, "Hey, I'm at ground zero. I don't even know where to launch from this."
Mm.
But I think in regards to when you get to the level of where you need to start looking for sponsors or you need to start looking for people who are going to invest in your business, when you get to a certain level in that regard, if you don't have the building blocks or the foundation figured out, it might be a little it might make other people hesitant to move forward in
Mm.
investing with you. So I think it's important, especially when you have an advisor, to help you figure out that foundation. So when you're ready to move forward in the launch of, the bigger next steps and
Mhm.
like getting sponsors or investors, they can see that you already have a blueprint and a foundation figured out. And they're like, okay, this entrepreneur knows what they want to do and they have an idea of how they want to do it. So I
Mhm.
think I'm ready to invest. So I think that's where that piece of advice of people want to help you keep the lights on came from Justin.
So tell me what your mission is, and was it easy? Did that come to you easily, or did you have to refine it a little bit here and there?
Yeah, so the mission for Liberated Creatives essentially is to offer groups and individuals um, like a way to empower people and communities through creative practices and artistic expression. And we do that by offering consultations, curating events, workshops, lectures, and just helping people with their creative projects or endeavors, or giving their projects and endeavors a creative flair. And coming up with that mission was not easy. Because, like I said, create Liberated Creatives, the name was an idea I've had for years, but how the business actually looks and operates was something I was constantly tweaking or trying. Like, it took many years to figure out, okay, how do I take all of my passions and put them into a business? How do I use my skills as a curator to help other visual artists? How do I use my event skills? How do I use my communication skills? There was one point where I was like, oh, well, maybe I'll become an art therapist because I really want to help people with also this holistic aspect because I think just allowing yourself to be creative is a really beautiful way to heal certain things within ourselves or to overcome hurdles or trials and tribulations. So I thought, oh, I'll just become an art therapist. But then I wasn't ready to go back to school. So what are the other options?
Yeah.
Or um, something before I launched Liberated was I didn't know how to balance being both an artist, but also being, a business minded person. Like I
Mhm.
wanted to do both, but I felt like I couldn't balance the two. So there was that issue of, you know, what can I offer through Liberated? Do I just offer like, hey, you can hire me to direct your shows or to curate your events or to model for you? Or do I want to focus more on the community aspect of, hey, what are your projects? What are the things you want to do? And how can I help you in the best way of, filling the holes that you need filled? So there were so many ways on how to operate Liberated, and it
Mhm.
took many years for me to decide what was going to be the best fit. But also, I found that meeting and speaking with other mentors and advisors that I looked up to, and just kind of being like, what do you think about this? What do you think our community needs? How can I use my best skill sets to find that balance to still offer something to others while
Mhm.
also still being able to lead by example in regards to using all of my creative skills. So that goes back into how important it is to have a mentor or an advisor or multiple mentors and advisors.
Now, is the goal right away to be doing this full time, or are you going to have one of the other jobs that, pays the bills in the meantime? Because I feel like that's something very important for people to know and understand, that it's okay that if you can't go full time right away to doing that, that there's still a place for it in your life.
Oh, absolutely. I think, there's nothing wrong with the hustle.
Right, right.
And I most definitely will be picking up, other jobs, like
Hmm.
other gigs, other freelance jobs and stuff, because that's what I've been doing in the meantime of getting Liberated started. Because I think it's okay to have, a part-time job or a different gig or something that can then you can use that job to further invest into your business
Hmm.
before your business becomes full time, right? Because
Right,
as entrepreneurs, we eventually want to get to a point where our business is our full time job. But
right.
I think it's absolutely okay and wonderful to have these other opportunities that can feed into your business.
What are some of the things that you're finding that you constantly have to kind of reframe or look at through a different lens when it comes to, planning and just, feeding into the business that's kind of your baby right now?
Yes. I think something that's really important that I started to recognize is you don't have to be a master or an all-time expert at something in order to still help people with it. You just have to be maybe one step ahead. Like I was presenting some things to an elementary class for career day, and something I was explaining is it's like a video game, right? Like you don't have to beat the entire video game. You just have to be one level up from whoever is helping you. So you might be on level 3 while your friend is on level 2. And even though you haven't beat the entire game, you know what it takes in order to beat level 2 to help your friend make it to level 3. So that's something that I'm constantly having to remind myself is when people reach out to me for a specific project or help on some specific task, even if I don't have a lot of experience doing that particular task or project, I might know some contacts that I can help them with and put them in the right direction. Or I might be able to do, A, B, and C, but not be able to do D and E, right? So it's kind of a matter of being able to stay confident in yourself that you know enough, at least to help someone move forward. And you don't have to know everything in order to do that.
What is something you need help with right now? How can the community be helping you make sure you execute this as your heart desires?
Ooh, that's a great question. I think the best thing the community can do to help me is just to recognize that I'm available to help them. And
Great,
that's
great.
something that I definitely want to do. Wearing all these different hats at the end of the day, yes, it is a creative outlet for me. Yes, it fills my soul as an artist, but I'm very community oriented. I've always have been. Growing up as a little girl, I remember the first time I started to see a different path for myself working for like an arts in the park camp and being, oh, if I had something like this program as a little kid, I questioned how my life would have changed or how it would have been easier for me to make it to where I wanted to make it to. And so, um, moving forward with that, I always just wanted to find an easier path for people to achieve their goals. So at the end of the day, that's what's most important to me. So just spreading the word of Liberated and getting it out there and letting other people know that I'm here to help you move forward in your creative projects and your processes. So the best thing the community can do is just speak out. Let people know that I'm here and available and ready to help you.
Okay, I know you said a website is to come. Is there any social media handles or anything else like that that we can go ahead and follow you on?
Yes, Liberated, like I said, it's in its beginning stages, so still trying to push everything out in that regard. But
Okay,
moving forward, you can follow me, Keisha McMillen, on Instagram and Facebook. And then I have Liberated Creatives as my TikTok handle. So
okay,
I will be sharing content of me just launching Liberated in that regard. So
okay.
you guys can see the process until I'm ready to have the big public launch.
Is there anything that you would like help with, like, for example, your website or anything like that? If someone else is maybe watching, listening, and they're like, I've got time to donate to a young entrepreneur, is there anything that you would have on a wish list?
Ooh, absolutely. Yeah, I think just I'm also still looking for more advice and just anyone who's willing to invest or collaborate. I want Liberated Creatives to be some sort of like a hub, a community hub.
Right.
So, again, if I am not the best person to help you with this project, I will be like, oh, here's so and so's contact information. Let me connect you with them. So I'm always looking for people who are wanting to collaborate with me or wanting to um, find a way for them to assist me so I can also assist them in a sense. So I think, if anything, if Liberated Creative sounds like interesting to anyone who just wants to get involved or offer any advice or tools or resources, I would love to connect with you.
Sounds great. Thanks so much. You can watch, listen both when you link over to your preferred platform from runitstudios.com. Be watching for Keisha McMillen and Liberated Creatives. Thanks so much.
Thank you.